Very good.
Hello and welcome. So this is one of my 60 inspirational conversations, and the gentleman that I am with today is the lovely Corey Anderson. Now, I have to admit to not knowing lots about this man, but I heard him speak at an event I was in, the Ultimate Birmingham event, and I was blown away with what he is doing in the medical field. And so I just thought, wow, I have to talk to this man. And he very, very kindly agreed. So here we are. Corey,
Well,
do
thank
you
you.
want to tell us a little bit about who you are, and let's see where this conversation goes, because
Sure.
you're blowing my mind. I love what you're.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the invite. It's my pleasure to be here and share my experience with you. A little bit about me. I'm going to, share a little bit about who I am in terms of where I'm from and what I do. But I live in South Dakota here in the United States, and I am a practicing physician assistant. And lately, in the last 3 years, I've actually been in the administrative world, working as a director of patient care at a hospital here in South Dakota. And through some of our through our intention and our commitment, we've created an experience here at our hospital that has resulted in our hospital being awarded the #1 hospital for patient experience and major orthopedic surgery. And we were named that 2 years in a row. And so we have gone about building that sort of experience in medicine, and coming from a place of being when we're doing that, who we are, how we show up in the world. And so that's what I've been up to. I've practiced orthopedics for about 13 years now, mostly in the world of total joint replacements. And so I did that for a fair amount of my career. But I've always worked in the healthcare medicine area for the last 20 years in various different roles. So I have a lot of experience in medicine. I grew up here in South Dakota, married, have 2 wonderful kids. We live in the beautiful Black Hills National Forest, so we love the energy and everything that comes through that. We spend a lot of time outdoors. So yeah, so that's a little bit about me. So that's where we're at.
Cool. So brilliant, wonderful.
Yeah.
So when I heard you talk, what really impacted me was this. Just before we jumped on here, I said to you, a lot of the times when we look at our political institutions and our medical institutions, and a lot of those, our educational institutions, all of these big things, it's very, very easy. I know I'm here in the UK and you're in America, but I still think, we have similarities in these things. Feel as if they are outdated models that are broken, that we're kind of putting a sticking plaster on to try and limp along. And what I heard in what you shared was that you are actually doing something that is blowing that out of the water. And you mentioned being there, you mentioned things. So could you expand on that? Because this award that you got, what you are doing in this hospital, it just shows what is possible for every and any hospital. So share a little bit about.
Absolutely. So, in terms of the institutions, like, they have gotten big, they've grown, they're huge institutions. And with that comes a lot of monotony and red tape. And we drain the energy out of our institutions, and we drain a lot of the intention and good that can come from them through just, patchwork of what's wrong and what we need to fix. But we don't really take a wholeness approach to the entire institution. And so what we chose to do here at our hospital is to look at it from an individual standpoint and say, how do we need to be whole in this space around medicine? And we started to look at it through the lenses of really three aspects of our experience, which is our patient's experience, our physician or provider experience, and then our team member experience. And we said, okay, so let's look at those 3 lenses and what would make someone whole and complete in that space. What would really get them to feel connected to that mission in this organization, in this institution that we call medicine. And so we started to do a lot of work around that with those 3 groups of individuals. And we started to build programs and conversations in those spaces as to what does it look like to serve your purpose in life and to meet the mission that medicine has, which is to serve and help others. And so we started to have a lot of conversations around that, which then gave us a lot of information about, people are called to do more, specifically in medicine, in the domain that I'm talking about. They're called to do more. They're called to serve a purpose, greater than themselves. And sometimes in these big institutions, we just start to lose that connection to our purpose. And so that's what we went about discovering. And as we discovered that, we found that there's a lot of people who feel connected to each other through this concept of serving a purpose. And so we started to create programs in our hospital where we started to explore that. And we explored it through the lens of our values, but also through the lens of who we are being, how we're showing up every day in medicine to care for our patients and to care for ourselves. And then we took it a next step further and said, how do we enroll patients into medicine with this in mind as well? How do we help our patients get the most that they can get out of it, the best outcome they can get out of it, by just having some simple conversations about who you're showing up as when we perform surgery for you? And so that's kind of the background of what we've been doing. And through that, we really have created some really tremendous programs. Our hospital has about 400 and some employees, and we have about 100 of our employees, 115 of our employees actively participating in programs that are conversations around this topic. Exactly. And so it's been a really good experience for us.
I have a good friend of mine who I will be sharing this with
Sure.
in the UK, and she is very, very interested. She helps support doctors when they get into overwhelm, because
Yes.
if you are doing a surgery or something like that, and potentially you can feel like this is on me. What if this goes wrong? That could be
right.
that could be. So I was really interested when you said about those conversations being about caring for yourself, and this how you are being, that we need to I've just had a tiny new grandson. I'm now
Wonderful.
3 grandchildren, and literally he was born,
Congratulations.
thank you. And he was born on the 10th of June.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
I've watched my daughter step into the role. This is her first child, and step into the role of being a mum. And some of the conversations we've had have been, from me kind of saying to her, remember that God, the power behind life, whatever it is, has got this little boy. And it's not all on you. You're absolutely, he's a tiny brand new infant who is helpless, but this can happen through you rather than, and it almost feels like to me you can do it like this, or you can do it like this. So
you crack open what's inside of you and you start to look at it. And so to go back to, where we focus on individuals, right? This, like, we could look at medicine as this huge structure, right? And we say, man, we got to fix medicine, right? There's a lot of people in the world who are trying to fix medicine in a way in which it's impactful through all people. And we want to do that as well, but you can't fix it as an entity. You fix it, or you shift it more than anything, through shifting the minds of individuals and the people, because that's where the real work comes in, is individualizing it in medicine. And so we spend a fair amount of time with our staff, our team members, our physicians, and so forth, talking about them specifically in our conversations, in our workshops, around what is their purpose, what resonates with the values that we have as an organization to them. You can't heal others until you kind of heal yourself, right? You can't do that. And so we have to spend some time on what that looks like for us individually, which then translates over to how we care for our patients and care for each other as a team. And so we have, and you would have heard this in our talk in Birmingham, we look at it through an equation. and it's an equation most people have heard of before, which is E equals MC squared, right? And you may have seen that, right? And
Yeah.
so the E stands for experience, right? And that's the experience that I described before, our team members, our providers, and our patients. And what creates that experience? Well, M stands for mission. We have to all have a common mission that we all believe in, that serves our purpose in life, that serves the organization's purpose. So we have to have a real strong mission, and you can include into that the values that we hold important to us. And then we have the C's, right? And the first C is compassion. And the second C is competence. And so we spend a significant amount of time talking about that equation here at our hospital. How are we being competent and compassionate? And how is that aligning with our mission to create that excellent experience that we can have in medicine? And so where that starts, though, is with an individual. We could, as an organization, say, yeah, we believe that E equals MC squared. Okay, good. That's good. We can take a stand for that. But until individuals, each one of us individually, can start to look at patients and experience through that lens of compassion and competence, then until we can do that, it's just another statement. It's just another mission statement. So we have to live into E equals MC squared. And so that's what we do in our conversations, in our workshops that we host, that people participate in. We look at that E equals MC squared and how we are living into that each day individually as individual people. And that's what we spend a lot of time talking about, because that's how we ultimately transform medicine, is through the individual work that each one of us does and how we bring ourselves to that work. We can create policies and have governmental changes at the insurance level, at whatever level you want, which will definitely shift medicine. But when you're looking at the experience of medicine, it starts individually with each one of us. And so we share the message of what we do and how we look at it so that it resonates and creates awareness with folks. But it ultimately comes down to each individual choosing to bring themselves to medicine a little differently than they did before.
Yeah, you can really see that is hugely impactful. And I can really see, like, at the Birmingham event, a part of the preparation and part of the talk, with the whole being, it is like, show up to this room being someone who is going to get something from this.
Absolutely.
And I know when you talked about enrolling the patient in this, very often when you have an experience, fortunately, I haven't had many hospital experiences, but I can really see that you go in as a patient and it feels like things are just being done to you, that it's not, you're not a part of this. It's almost sometimes can feel like the doctors are talking over you as if you don't exist sometimes.
Yes, and it's scary.
Yeah. And on both sides, you can see how that is scary, because that stops you participating. You don't feel included. And then you don't go into that thinking about how can I create the best outcome. But I loved how you were saying, we want the doctors to come in how can they show up to have the best outcome, but how can we enroll the patients into this?
Yeah, enrolling patients is really important part, and being a patient is you have to approach it differently. As you said, most patients will come into medicine with with maybe a not full understanding of what's happening, what's going on, and they feel possibly talked down to or talked over, and things are happening to them and so forth. So there's that experience, which then creates fear. So then you start to act and come from a place of fearfulness. And so, in the world of, if you're in the movement of being, or if you're in the study of being and coming from being, being is generated at the core, right? With love, right? Coming from a place of being, where you're the blank slate and you create from that, right? And so, I'm a faithful person, and I believe in that, we work God in our lives and and so forth. And so coming from that place where I am the blank slate, I'm being love as, you know, God would have us be love. And when you come from that place of being, then you can create all kinds of things. You create all kinds of things in life. And if you're coming from that place as a provider, then, you know, you're showing and you're demonstrating love to patients through communication and through education and through spending time and being competent and compassionate with them. But as a patient, if you're coming through medicine, you can also create from that place, right? As a patient, because instead of coming from a place where I'm fearful and I'm being talked over, then if you need to, and have the desire to create a different experience for yourself, then you can come from that place and you create out of your being, which is, I want to be engaged in this care. I want to understand this care. I want to be a part of the communication around my care. And I want to be a part of the outcome of my care. What does that look like? And so that's where we start to enroll patients, is you come from a place where you want the best outcome for yourself. As providers, we want the best outcome for you. And we want you to come from a place where you want the best outcome for yourself. And so we do spend some time with our patients talking about that. How can you come from a place to create the best outcome for yourself? And what does that look like? You know, I spend a lot of my time in joint replacements in my past. And so we would ask our patients often, what's the best outcome for you? What does that look like? And some of them will say, I just want to be able to go up and down the stairs again, or I want to be able to play with my grandkids, like, or I want to be able to, and some people will say, I want to be able to get back to, you know, doing triathlons, riding my bike, running marathons. Everyone has their own thing, right? And so we want to know, what is it that motivates you to create that best outcome? And then we enroll you into what that looks like. Well, if it is to go play with your grandkids, what that looks like for us is that you will be an active participant in your physical therapy, and you will be an active participant in coming to your appointments, and you will be an active participant in doing the follow through that we want to have around your surgery. And so we actually talk to them about how they're coming to medicine to get that outcome. And then we create agreements around it. And we say, okay, so we can agree that if we're going to proceed with this surgery, that you're going to participate in your physical therapy, or you're going to let us know when you have questions, or if something doesn't make sense to you, then we have an agreement that you're going to stop us and ask us those questions so that we can fill it in for you. And so we go about asking our patients what outcome they're seeking, and then we help them create agreements between us and the surgical teams to get to that outcome. And so we enroll them into who they're being as a part of medicine.
I just love that. It's so, and you can just see the sense in that, because
yeah,
from that space, you can see how both parties, both as a patient, like the old model, if you like, when the doctor is doing something to you and it's happening to you, and it's the doctor's job to make you better. On both sides, you can see how the doctor can then get into overwhelm, because this is all on me. This is like, it's nothing. I'm just doing something to this person that's going to, you know, and this is how it's going to happen.
Right.
So you can see both parties will easily, that's a really easy trap to fall into fear on both sides.
On both sides.
This doctor is like, this is all on me. And this patient is, I'm completely at the mercy of someone else. And if they, you know, they've had a bad day or whatever, on both sides, you can see that opens up a lot of potential for fear on both sides. And yet that conversation to kind of say to the doctor, we're both participants in this, both have a role to play. And if we play our role at our best, that's going to be the best outcome. So it's just, it's in so many senses, it's so simple, and yet, wow, you know?
Yeah, it is. You know, when you step back and you just look at it and you say, man, this is about just communicating, building relationships, and being honest, and coming from a place of, I'm going to do my best for you. but I also need you to come to do your best. And through that, we can create something really magnificent. And so, and I tend to talk about this coming from a provider standpoint, because that's where I've lived most of my time.
Yeah.
But I work with a lot of teams, and this works super well. It works really well with nurses and with surgery techs and with anyone in medicine. This works for, because it's really about understanding what is that mission, and then approaching the mission through that competence and that compassion, and just say, how can we create the best experience for you? And what does that look like for you? And so, I have had floor nurses who work in the hospital directly on the floor with patients. And those are a tough job. And trying to enroll, and you have to enroll the patient into their care so you can care for them effectively in the hospital, so they get to feel better and they can get out of there. They want to go home to their families. And so working with our teams to talk to them about, how are you talking to the patient and enrolling them in their own care so that they can get the outcome that they desire. And so it works well all across medicine. And so we look at it as a triangle, right? We have the patient on the top, and then in one corner we have our team, and in the other corner we have our providers. And so we talk a lot about these groups talking to the patients and vice versa, but it also, this way, is really important. We spend a lot of time with these 2 points of this triangle too, because, our team, COVID hit, and the whole culture of medicine, people were burnt out, people were frustrated. We all kinds of things were happening coming out of COVID. People quit medicine because of the frustration and the burnout that happened. And so we also have to look at creating the experience for those 2 corners of the triangle, and say, okay, team, what are we doing to create the experience for the physicians or the providers? Okay, providers, what are we doing to create the experience for the team? And what that looks like, and I work in a surgical hospital, so we do, lots of surgery. What that looks like is, what are we doing as a team to help the provider complete their job and do what they need to do to be in alignment with what they've created with the patient, and vice versa. And so, how is the surgeon coming each day for the team? What does that look like? Compassion, kindness, generosity, listening, coming from a place of, I'm going to listen to what's going on for them. Just being there to support that team. And then the team saying, okay, let's acknowledge where the surgeon is at. What do we need to do to support them? How are we making sure that we're competent and we're compassionate towards where they're at, and meeting them where they're at? And when we start to engage each other that way, just the experience of team members and providers starts to improve. I mean, when we approach it through the E=MC² for each other, everything starts to improve. Like, just the whole experience changes for people. It shifts, and people are much more satisfied, and they're much more aligned with the mission that we have, and then they feel more fulfilled. And that's what we're trying to transform medicine into, is a place where people feel more fulfilled and they're serving the purpose that they want to serve in life. And through that, we transform medicine. And so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, you can really see, like when you were talking about the triangle, you can see plenty of times when those 3 sections just feel like completely separate, as if there is, like, they're 3 dots with no connection to them. Like you've got a surgeon who's doing something who doesn't, and the providers are chuntering about the surgeon because they have no idea what it's like with what they've got to do. And the surgeon is like, well, the providers aren't, I need them to be doing this, and I need them to be doing this. The surgery afterwards, that care is going well. And you can really see the communication. And also, I've just been reading a book. What's it called? I think it's called something like Kitchen Table Wisdom, but it's written by a doctor. And they were talking, the doctor was talking, and initially they were talking about the hours that they did with their training and things. And initially they came to be a doctor through, like you say, a mission. They wanted to save lives, they wanted to change lives, they wanted to be impactful, they wanted to do all this stuff. And it feels like over the period, like when I was reading the training that they
Yeah.
do to be a doctor, it's like there is no care. Why are we letting our doctors be? Why are we letting them go through this when it's like there is no space for
Yeah.
sleep, self-care? And
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
absolutely know how
Yeah.
important it is. And that will completely rip you apart from this mission that you
Yes.
started out with, this idea that you started out with.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
but coming back
There,
to reconnecting with that. Yeah, sorry, go on.
yeah. There's so in Birmingham, Jeff Mars, the
Yeah.
guy, my partner that I speak with, he talks a little bit about being indoctrinated, right? And the doctor part of that is that, through the training of medicine, you get taught and things get instilled in you that are almost counterproductive to what medicine is and should be about. And so you start to develop this story around that piece of your training and that piece of who you need to be in order to, perform as a provider, as a surgeon, as a physician. You become indoctrinated to that piece of medicine, that part of medicine. And it's usually counterintuitive to really creating a positive experience for yourself and for others. And so how do we shift the mindset around that part of it? Because you do have to do the training, you have to learn, you have to understand and develop those skill
Yeah,
sets.
I want somebody, if I'm going to have surgery, I want
Yeah.
someone who
Yeah.
knows what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but it doesn't, the part that generally is encounter to what medicine is about doesn't have to be that way. And it
No.
starts with
No.
just conversations and language and shifting the mindsets of how we approach medicine. And so there's a part of what we do through our, we have here at the hospital, we have a provider mastermind group that meets and talks about that side of things is, how we have come to medicine and how we were trained to come to medicine. And is that creating the experience that we want to have in medicine? And oftentimes, there's a fair amount of things that we say, no, that's not helping us. It's not serving us very good to have that mentality. And so how do we break away from that? And so we do that in our mastermind groups with our providers, talking about things like that so that we can start to shift the mindsets. This is the world of being it's a mountain with no top. So this is not, there's not a particular destination here that we're trying to get to, other than just to create awareness and to then give and speak being into medicine, because that's what we're trying to do here at the hospital, is speak it into existence and create things around it that will truly have an impact and transform medicine in a very positive way.
What has been the biggest thing that you have seen since you've been doing this, since this has been being implemented in your hospital? What would you say has been the biggest change that you have seen?
I would say for me personally, what I would say has been the biggest thing that I've just been absolutely thrilled with is we have what we call the ambassador program. And this is where I talked about the 115 people have been engaged with this sort of information. But what I see is that the people that participate in that, the light inside them comes back on, because they start to reconnect to their purpose of how they're showing up every day. And that for me is really personally awesome to see. So for me, that's the biggest thing. We can get all kinds of awards. That's wonderful too. But having great outcomes is a part of this, and that's important. And we do have good outcomes here at our hospital. But personally, what I've really cherished the most is seeing people really start to feel connected to their purpose again here in medicine, because we do have a tendency to lose that connection if we're not focused on it. So
did you lose your connection to, how has this changed you? Did you lose your way at all? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to describe it is that you have, as as a human being, you have a purpose and you feel called to do something. And most people in medicine feel called to work in medicine because they have a desire to help others, right?
Mhm.
And it's easy to lose your way in that. You definitely want to help somebody and you're in the business of helping people. But it's easy in medicine to start to lose sight of that through all of the paperwork and all of the clinic appointments and the surgery days that get long and, being on call and taking phone calls in the middle of the night. And you really start to lose, you start to become a little selfish in how you're approaching medicine, because it becomes less about how you're serving others and more about, how is this serving me sometimes? And we lose sight of that. And so I would say to some extent, I did lose a little bit of that, before I came into the work of, being, and kind of came into the work of just trying to transform my experience in medicine. I kind of lost that. I kind of lost that tide, that mission, that purpose. And, coming through COVID and coming out of COVID and kind of just, globally, people looking for more of a connection in life after that shutdown that we all went through. I guess that would say that probably kickstarted it. And we started to think a little bit more about, man, what are we doing here? And what is the real purpose of what we're doing here? And what are we trying to create? Are we trying to create amazing experiences? Or are we just trying to do surgery and get people moving? And, what are we trying to do here? And I think through that process of just exploring all that, started to really connect with, man, there's so much more to do here. And we could really impact the lives of so many people if we just started to shift our mindset on how we came to work in medicine, or how we came to be in medicine. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I came from this.
Mm. So
Yeah.
if somebody is listening to this and they're not really sure what you mean by
Yeah.
being, could you
Yeah.
expand a little bit on how you see that, what that means
Yeah.
to you in this?
Yeah. So actually, you know what? I'm going to take 1 second here, because I actually put this down into words the other day. Someone had asked me, if I can, here it is. So someone had asked me, how would I define being?
Mm.
And so I put this into words, and I'm not going to say that this is actually real great. It's just a rough draft of being, but the best way I can describe it through words, I'm going to try and just describe this in language, because being is something that we try to use language to describe, but there's so much more depth to being than just what we can put into words. So I'm going to start with that as the caveat to what this is. So if you give me a second, I'll just try to describe it. Does that sound good? So the way that I would describe it is, it's a combination of our attitude or our state of mind, our feelings or emotions, our body sensations, and our thoughts and memories. It is what is going on with us internally in any given moment at any given situation. It is what drives our actions in a given moment or situation based upon how that moment occurs for us. So it's everything that's going on with us physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, moment by moment. And so our being is something that we already always are. Like we have a being. If you go through and think about what creates our outcomes, right? Our outcomes are driven by our actions. Our actions are created by our words. Our words are created by our thoughts. What creates our thoughts? Our thoughts are created by our being in the world, where we come from, all of those things put together. And so it is often concealed in the background realm of life, but it is our way of existing and showing up in the world. It is our authentic self that empowers us to choose and to be free. And so it is the freedom to think and speak and to act and ultimately to create. And it's the greatest gift that we have in life, which is our ability to choose how we experience and how we show up in the world. So in essence, it's really our spirit, our connection to our higher power that relates to life on a very deeper and fuller level. And our being is our existence, and it opens up our ability to relate to the world around us, and it deepens our ability to relate to others, and it enriches the way in which we experience our life. So it's really the starting point or the genesis of who we are individually. That's our being. It's the genesis of who we are. And so that's how I would describe being.
Oh my God.
So it's hard
That was amazing.
it's hard to put into language
Mm.
what that is. But yeah, I mean, if you believe in the higher power, if you believe in God, you believe in that sort of, if you believe in that, which I do, God created each one of us in the image of himself, right? And so he gave us this and said, use this. I'm with you. Create from that. Be that. Right. And so we create a lot of stories in life around who I am or who you are. But those things are just stories. And how we create those stories is based upon how life occurs for us moment by moment. And so, our being is the genesis of all of that. And so the cool thing is that we have the ability to choose who we're being and to create from it. And so I hope that helps answer your question.
It was an absolutely fantastic answer. It was brilliant. Yeah, I mean, that was quite a big ask for you, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, call it some sort of synchronicity. Someone asked me that the other day and I put it into words the best I could. And so, yeah, here you asked and I had something. So it worked out.
Because it absolutely is beyond anything, isn't it? And I mean,
Yeah.
the word of God works perfectly for me, but I know, there are plenty of people who that doesn't work for, but
Yeah.
you can.
But it doesn't have to, I mean,
work.
if you don't come from that place of, maybe that's God is not a thing for you. Maybe you connect to just the universe and something is created the universe and created this inside of us. And so you can come from wherever you are, but the really being is the genesis of what your existence is. I mean, that's where you're at. And it's always there and it always has been there. It's not something that most of us move through life without really being awake to what's going on in our being, right? We just move moment to moment, very consciously or unconsciously, however you want to describe it. We just move from moment to moment, reacting to life. Comes at you, we react, right? And we just don't think about it. We feel the feelings, we feel the emotions, and we react and so forth. But being just takes you way upstream of that reaction. And you just come from that place, and that will create an amazing experience in life for people. So
it's huge, the difference that it makes when you begin to realize, like when you are being triggered, like reacting, when you start to see. Initially, I know for me, I didn't realize that I had any control. That felt like that was just, again, this conversation that we're having, it feels like it's just being done to me. I don't have any say in this. But then coming from a place, just seeing that, and first of all, becoming aware of my reactions to things, and aware of what's going on inside, and then seeing, actually, I can have a choice in who it is I am showing up to be.
Yeah. Sometimes our goal in our workshops that we do with folks is really just to get them to create an awareness, right? Like, if I would like to have this outcome, how do I need to show up to have that outcome? Right. And then to do a little self look inside and say, man, that's not the outcome I wanted. It was probably because I was like this, right? And so and sometimes it's just creating the space that awareness needs to show up. Like, you can choose to be mean and angry with a team member or with a patient, and you're going to get an outcome that's mean and angry, right? And you're not going to feel very good about it. But if you want the outcome to be good, kind, caring, considerate, then you need to show up as someone who's creating a good, kind, caring space. You're not going to get a good, kind, caring space out of someone who's angry and mad. Those things don't align. And so we spend a lot of time just having conversations to create awareness. Oh, well, you didn't want the team member to be mad at you, then you shouldn't have yelled at them, right? Like, you didn't want the patient to be mad at you, then you shouldn't have done that, right? Like, you gotta create the space for people to start to become aware that they get to choose how they're being moment by moment. I have a choice to become frustrated. I have a choice to become angry. I have the choice to be happy. I have the choice. And that's the key, is you have the choice. And then it just becomes a lot of self-work to start to recognize when you're starting to get spooled up into angry and make a decision to shift to a different space. And that takes individual work for individual people. So our conversations around just creating this space to be aware that you have the choice to do something differently, and you can do something differently. And if you can create something amazing by doing something differently. Hey, if you choose to be angry and mad at people, and you were aware that you were going to be angry and mad, then you're going to have to live with the outcome of that. Right? Because you're constantly creating in life. We're always creating something in life. And so just awareness is really important.
And it is amazing when we move into being more spiritually aware of how life works. It absolutely, it's kind of in some ways very counterintuitive, and it actually works the opposite way. When you see it, it makes sense. But this whole, well, this person did something, so it's not that I'm choosing to be angry, it's that of course I'm going to be angry because this, but beginning to see actually you can do something different, and then you break that cycle. And in one sense, you know, everything that you have shared here, I know specifically you're doing this in medicine, but you can see the whole thing. This is it. We create these cycles, and everybody just says, well, this is the way it is. You know, I'm a surgeon who's overworked, who can't do this. I can't, you know, I can't talk to this team member. I can't how do I communicate with a patient who isn't blah 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 blah, and then the patient is like, well, the doctor doesn't listen to me, the doctors don't care, they just want to get in and do my surgery and get out. And then you've got your nurses and your caregivers, well, the doctors don't ever spend any time with us, and the patients are a pain. And you can see everybody believes that they're part of, and it's someone else's job in one sense to like my story and my, you know, come from, I was in what was considered a very abusive relationship, and coming to a place of seeing who I was being, there was never going to be another outcome.
Right.
And kind of seeing, actually, I could say I was a victim of something somebody else did to me, but equally I could look at, like, I can see who I am being now, that could not happen. It just couldn't unfold in my life now. And yet when it happened, nothing else could have happened. You know, and seeing, it was quite a hard swallow to kind of say, you know, oh, if I'm different. But if we can do that, you can really see everything can change. And it only takes one person in any of these cycles, however it happens. If one person sees something different and is prepared to be different, it can't sustain.
That's great. You know, in our workshops with our teams, I will often tell them, you know, we're going to have this conversation around medicine and conversation around what we do here at the hospital, but this carries over to every aspect of your life, because that's where this is. That's where this is coming from, is who you're being, and you carry who you're being everywhere. So we're going to talk about it in this domain, but this is everywhere in life. And so, you know, the things that we work on in the workshop are integrity, you know, your word, and you are what you say, and what you stand for, and, you know, how you honor your word. One of the workshops that we do is entirely around ownership of your life. Because in medicine, we generally do that. We generally say, it was the surgeon's fault. It was the nurse's fault. It was the therapist's fault. It was, you know, the insurance company's fault. It was the pharmacist's fault. Whatever it is, we always place blame and try to be the victim, right? And if there's a victim, then there's somebody that's perpetrating against us, right? So they're to blame. Right? And so, you know, you can't be a victim without somebody else. And so, you know, so we spend an entire workshop talking about ownership and what role you have in medicine to take responsibility and accountability for what's happening. And so, because that's a big part of stopping the cycle, is ownership. And so we spend a fair amount of time on that. And why we include integrity is because if you take a stand that you are accountable or you are your word, and I am someone who's accountable, or I'm someone who's a good communicator, or I'm someone who's, working, providing service, or whatever it is, then that's what you are when you speak it with your word. And so that's really important to us that we talk about that in medicine, because it all comes down to integrity. You're a matter of your word, nothing more, nothing less. And the way that you honor your word is by doing what you said you would do and do it on time. Or if you can't, you let people know and you clean up the mess. Because in medicine, it's all about communication and cleaning up. Sometimes there's messes. There just are in life, and you have to clean them up. And you have to take ownership for that, because that's how those cycles stop. Otherwise, we just get into the victimhood and the blame game, and that doesn't create any good experience for anyone. And so we spend some time talking about that in our group. So, yeah.
Honestly, I love it. You're giving me symbols with all the, and it's, as I said, it is like you can really see this is in all areas. The same things apply everywhere. What you learned here, they apply everywhere.
Yeah.
So you're doing this amazing thing in your hospital. Is this can you duplicate this? Like, are other hospitals already duplicating it? Can there be more duplication?
Yeah. So yeah. So Jeff and I are wanting to duplicate this in other places. And so we are looking for opportunities for people to work with us and explore this in other areas. We have several other groups that we've been in communication with about doing this type of work in their hospitals or in their places. And we, in the UK, here in the United States, all over the world, we want to share our experience. We want to help others learn from the experience. And, Jeff and I provide some of these services for folks so that we can take what we've learned and provide it to them. And so we want to replicate and duplicate and expand this and transform medicine really through this type of work. And so, it's going to be out there. We do have a Facebook page called Being in Medicine. If you want to join that and be a part of it, we just started it. So there's not a lot there, not yet, but we're working on it. But we want to have conversations with people like this, like with yourself, and share our experience and get people interested in. And if people are wanting to learn more, they can contact us, reach out to us, because we want to share this with people in order to transform medicine. That's our goal. That's our mission.
Cool. Well, I will make sure that the Being in Medicine Facebook group, that's the link.
And I'm happy to share my email address with you. You can put it out there for them. My phone number too. I'm fine with whatever. People can reach out. I'd love to have conversations, even one person at a time, 10 people at a time, whatever it is. I do a lot of work with our teams. And so we have, I do work with individuals one-on-one all the way up to, groups of 20 or 30 at a time, just having conversations and introducing this. The way that we introduced it here was just with language. It started with just creating common language in our organization, and where people would understand what it is a little bit about being. What does it mean to be in integrity? What do you mean by ownership or accountability? And we started to create that language with people in our hospital. So now I could go out and talk with nurses on the floor, or I could talk with physicians, and I'm not going to say all of them 100%, but most of them would have an idea of where I'm coming from when I say, hey, what about competence? How are we looking at this through compassion? And they would recognize where we're at with that. And sometimes that's where it begins, is in organizations, just what is the mission? And how can we create language where people start to speak the same language? And then we start to build on that language and start to create what we need to create. And so I love having those conversations with people. So you send them my way.
Oh, cool. I've got someone in mind. I mean, our language is so powerful, isn't it? We create by the conversations that we have. We create by the language that we use. And it's so...
I'm a real big believer in being creates thoughts, which creates our words, which then creates our actions, which then create our outcomes. And so, it starts at who we're being, but things are created in our language. That's how we communicate with each other. That's how we create action in each other, is with our language, whether it's written or spoken, whatever it is. And so having common language is just the foundation to how we create really amazing things.
You get to hear, you can hear in people's language. It gives you the clue of who they are being, no matter, because people can say, oh, I'm this type of person, or I'm that type of person, but the clues, and our lives don't lie. That is one of the real huge thing that I've seen. You know, if we actually look at what's going on, our lives don't lie. Who we are being ends up there.
It's very true. It's very true. I worked with someone not too long ago, and their thoughts were, you know, I don't feel a part of this team, or I don't feel like I belong here. And they then started to speak that language. I don't think I belong here. I don't think I'm a part of this team. Well, guess what? They went through life every day looking for reinforcements of that thought, reinforcements of that language. And sometimes we just have to go back up to the thought and say, hey, let's use a different thought. The thought is, I do belong here, and they do want me here, and they do want me to be a part of this team. And then you start looking for that, and then your language creates that, and then your actions. So it's all a big part of how you create things. And so thoughts, language, actions, it's there. So yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
I want to say a massive, massive thank you. I've really, really enjoyed our conversation. It's been amazing.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's I love talking about this. I love sharing it with folks. So thank you. I acknowledge you for reaching out. Very, very courageous and brave, and it shouldn't be. I hope I'm not that scary.
But, you were absolutely wonderful. Honestly, it was. I was a little bit like, shall I? I thought, hey,
no,
what's the worst? He's going to say no. And then I thought,
yeah, never hesitate.
Yes, and showed
never
up.
hesitate. You don't know until you ask. So I appreciate, I acknowledge you for doing that, and it's been a pleasure to sit and spend some time with you. And I thank you for creating this space for this to happen. And happy 60th birthday, right?
Thank you. Have you got any closing, any closing wisdom or inspiration to share before we wrap up?
You know, I would just say, in parting, is that, you know, this is an individual endeavor, and you create your life and you create your experience, and you need coming from a place of what you want in life is where you should really come from. And in medicine, I'm going to keep this in the caveat of medicine, you create your experience there. And so just recognize how individualized this is to who you are and who you're being, and come from that place of what you're trying to experience in life, and you will get that experience. And so just keep that center and come from a place of love and genuine, authenticity, and it'll be a pretty enrichful life. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure and delight and pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.